welcome to a new episode of Psicoactivo. Uh, Today, we're gonna talk a little bit about a podcast that I was kind of feeling that it would happen soon because I've seen uh, this guest go on other podcasts quite recently, and the way I'm gonna view this is that this guest is very he knows that he's a viral individual. So whenever he talks about something, the stuff that he talks about, a lot of people are going to watch it. So many podcast hosts in the big sphere regard him as a guest that can bring in the views, right? But this doesn't necessarily reflect that his opinions are the same opinions as the podcast hosts. I am talking about Billy Carson. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. He has this the Forbidden Knowledge page and has multiple YouTube channels. He talks about older ancient civilizations such as the Sumerians and other ancient civilizations, and he's one of the biggest proponents of the ancient alien hypothesis, which talks about these Annunaki. They're called in different ways depending on the text and who is translating it, but they're essentially the same. They're supposed to be non-human intelligences from a different place that came to Earth hundreds of thousands of years ago, and they meddled with one of the hominids in the planet and essentially created us humans through genetic engineering. That's the hypothesis looked at from a perspective outside of the bubble. You can go in with every translator and scripture and make your own assessment, but it becomes so convoluted that it's difficult to come up with one single account. There is Zachariah Sitchin and his famous book about the Anunnaki and the Planet Nine, Nibiru, it's called Nibiru. And then there's also a more serious approach, which is Mauro Biglino, the Italian scholar from the Vatican, who used to be one of the official translators of the oldest scriptures at the Vatican. But when he translated his stuff, they excommunicated him. Biglino talks with one of my favorite guests on Psicoactivo, with Dr. Alex Gomez Marin, who is a theoretical physicist who is investigating these topics that can be considered fringe in many ways, controversial. But there is no reason for us to not investigate these cases. If there's data, we should have a right to look into them. And the scientific and the scientific community and the cleric vehemently opposed talking about these topics because they contradict the official narrative established by the either governments or the churches or the organized religions. But the matter of the fact is that these scriptures exist. There are different interpretations of them. Just recently, Dr. Amon Hillman was on the Danny Jones podcast, and I've talked about this a little bit. But his claims are that the oldest scriptures of the Testaments are in ancient Greek. And there aren't very many people who study ancient Greek. Amon Hillman claims that he has nearly 30,000 pages of ancient Greek scriptures, and he has only gone through a couple thousand of them. And the information he got and he told Danny Jones about comes only in those only 2,000 pages he's translated so far. Can you imagine what else is in there? I mean, and the Greeks, they get a bad rep, man, because they had this hedonistic way of life. they like to party, they like to consume substances. They didn't even have a difference between homosexuality and heterosexuality. They just named it eros, which is just carnal love, like erotic love. But they didn't differentiate between homosexuals and heterosexuals and bisexuals. They just had one word for everything. For them, it was just love, but the erotic kind. And I find that very interesting because the Greeks, they probably had the most visceral interpretation of life at the time. And imagine they were looking at from the outside at everything that was going on in Rome, and also in Jerusalem and in all the Holy Land. They obviously had their own their own interpretation of what happened. And many of these scriptures do get into mythology quite a bit. And the Emerald Tablets, which are the ones that Billy Carson talks with Joe Rogan about, they essentially talk about civilizations that obliterated themselves thousands and thousands of years ago with mysterious weapons that are eerily similar, or if not similar, just as destructive as the weapons we have today, the state-of-the-art weapons we have today. And there's evidence that he shows Rogan about these weapons that is honestly is kind of mind-boggling. But the part that gave me the most pause, and the reason I'm doing this video, is where he talks about weapons that they used back then, and they're described in the Emerald Tablets of that are very similar to what essentially right now are the effects caused by the Havana syndrome. And we talked about the Havana syndrome for a little bit on both on my channel and on the Down to Earth channel with Christian Harloff. And this is strange. I don't know if the world government's got a new way of weaponizing certain aspects of, I don't know, physics or chemistry or frequency management, frequency tonality to affect people. I know that there are certain frequencies that make people want to vomit, for example, or I know there are certain frequencies that make people want to go to the bathroom uncontrollably. That's real. So imagine if there is a certain technology based on frequency that can make you have some adverse physical reactions that you can't control. That sounds awfully familiar to these Havana syndrome stuff. And there's also the programming that keeps happening on a day-to-day basis through either social media or just sounds, or there's so much fuckery going on in the world that we really have no idea it's happening, but it is happening under our noses. And I don't want to get really conspiratorial here. I don't want to get into specifics, but if you have the ability to discern something that really seems off about anything, any topic, you need to sit down, pause a little bit, and analyze something that's happening and try to be as I know it's kind of impossible to be objective because we're subjects. So by definition, we only see the world from the place we're standing on. So that makes it difficult to be objective. But in terms of analyzing case by case, you can have a level of objectivity, if you know what I mean. And looking at this, I know that Billy Carson is a person that has been controversial before. He's been accused of stuff before I'm not going to go into detail about this, but just so you know, I'm well aware of this stuff that Billy Carson has been involved in, and that is not really the point of making this video. The point is that this man has been reading a lot of this stuff, a lot of these tablets, trying to make his own interpretations. This is a great way to perhaps interest you in people who are also doing this but have a different background than he does, and you can come to your own conclusions. Mauro Biglino spoke about the Elohim, which are essentially also the Annunaki, but he calls them the Elohim, and they're plural. They have godlike power, but Mauro doesn't specify if there is actually a god above these Elohim. So I wonder what has changed and what in the interpretation throughout the millennia, how many things have been modified of these scriptures, and how many of these translations have been interpreted, not translated, in order to serve a purpose or serve a narrative based on whichever religion wanted to impose the law, you know? And we know there's been this historic fight and disagreement between old texts. You know, the Bhagavad Gita has some stuff that is disputed by the Bible. They have some stuff in the Torah that is also disputed, and the Quran. But many of these scriptures talk about similar storylines, that it's really strange that they're so separated from each other and they all have similar stories. There must be something to them. I know Tucker Carlson was talking about that yesterday as well, but he's talking about it from a Christian perspective. We need to look at this from a scientific, historical, and anthropological perspective, not a religious one, because that's the way that I believe it's gonna help us get to the core of the information. Also a journalistic one, because but I want to show you a clip right now of these weapons that Billy Carson talks about. I'm going to show it to you right here.
But then, there's the argument that the natural disasters are actually good, because the natural disasters knock us back down. If we're about to destroy everything, knock us back down to some much more primitive version of ourselves, and then we have to rebuild society again over thousands of years, which to the universe is the blink of an eye.
That's the blink of an eye. You're right. That's exactly what happened in the Emerald Tablets. 36,000 years ago, Thoth he arrives in this place called the land of Kem, ancient Kemet, before it was known as Egypt. His father sent him on a mission to rebuild civilization back up to a high level, meaning that it already was at a high level prior to this flood situation. And he says he gets into the great ship of the master and he takes off into the sky until the earth disappears. And then he goes to the plane appointed and he sees beneath him the children of the land of Kem. And he descends down. He doesn't sail in. He descends down. And when the ship lands, he opens his doors and he comes out with his crew. And he says the barbarians came at him to attack him with cudgels and spears. He says, I raised my staff and sent out a ray of vibrations, stopping him still as fragments of stone of the mountain. So he had a stun gun. He had a weapon that was, not lethal, non-lethal weapon that can freeze you in your tracks. And we have something just like that now in the military called the active denial system. They can send a beam at a crowd coming to attack and make them stop still right in their tracks. They can make you feel like you're on fire, make you feel like you want to vomit. They can even put voices in your head. And they can make you be in extreme pain. It's called the active denial system. So he's talking about technology back then that we have right now.
Dude, go look up that. Because do you think that's what that Havana syndrome thing is?
It's possible, man. This thing, if you put it above, like in the sky, and aim it at an area and it beam spreads a little bit, you can create mass illness, mass sickness, mass hysteria. You can have everyone running around thinking that they've got somebody talking to them and commanding them to do certain things. It's out of control. This weapon can be fully weaponized in a lethal way And the way that can make people become psychotic, you can make somebody think they're burning it on fire.
Whoa. Active denial system demo. Can we listen to what this guy's saying?
It can deter individuals on a military perimeter all the way up to a riotous crowd, all without permanent harm.
It only penetrates 1/64 of an inch of your skin. Goes very shallow into where your nerve receptors are.
They can't take the pain.
There's no permanent injury caused by it.
So what does it do to them?
You send a frequency, a beam of frequency, just like Thoth says in the Emerald Tablets. I put this in my book because it's important.
Any of the guests volunteer to test out its effectiveness and safety, including the Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps.
Wow, he said
Sergeant
fuck
Major
it.
of the Marine Corps,
He said
and
fuck it.
Assistant Secretary of the Navy. Most described it as feeling like a hot oven or grill being opened up.
It is something that...
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what he used on them thousands of years ago.
Holy shit.
video's
Or
from
something like
2012.
Something like
2012?
Yeah.
Oh, now they turned you into a statue.
Oh,
Actually
yeah.
statue.
Absolutely.
Now it's over. And Medusa.
Yeah.
Medusa.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Same tech.
What do you think Medusa was?
Frequency technology.
Imagine that. Imagine that story.
And then I'm going to show you guys what Billy Carson and Joe Rogan talk about the crash retrieval programs and the possible technology that in terms of UFOs that the U.S. government may have already developed. I'm going to show you the clip right here.
Diana Pasolka's books where they talk about these discs that they have found in the recovery program that apparently does exist. And they call them donations. They think that these things are kind of left here so that we can just go, oh, fiber optics, what a great idea.
Velcro.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of these things that seem to, like transistors.
Microchips, right.
Yeah, a lot of these things seem to have come very quickly after Roswell.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
That's a fact. I believe in the ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles. I believe that exactly is what's really going on with a lot of these UAPs. I think that a lot of them are ours. I believe that there's UFOs out there, but a lot of these objects that we see in the sky are probably made by us by re-engineering existing alien technology. And so, but, you know, it comes to the point, are we going to be able to advance as a civilization to get beyond war? I just saw they released an AI fighter jet that went into a dogfight.
Yes.
Just a few weeks ago.
Yeah, Mike Baker was on here showing us that. And
Right.
it beats the human piloted planes 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
like, that's a wrap.
That's Skynet.
Yeah,
Skynet
that's
is
Skynet.
online.
So it seems that Billy is aware of everything that's going on with the disclosure effort, right? But he never really gets into it specifically. He tries to stay on the ancient civilization part of it and the ancient alien hypothesis, which is highly contested. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea. I happen to think that it's a great storyline for a movie, you know, and it's very interesting. But if I don't have actual proof of it, I'm not gonna report it as truth, obviously. But that doesn't take anything away from the fact that it's very interesting, and there are many different threads where to pull from in order to maybe reach a conclusion of what actually happened. Whoever has been reading these texts, I would encourage you guys to tell us in the comments what you've learned, if anything, and let us know what your experience reading these texts have been. If you don't consider yourself to have a fanatical approach to religion, I would also encourage you that if you read the Bible and other texts, you can tell us what you can interpret from these translations that were made. And if some of the interpretations do point at a potential ancient alien hypothesis, because I find this topic fascinating, and it's coming together with other topics as well. You know, everything that's happening with the mummies. I think it's intertwined with all of this too, because deals with ancient civilizations, the potential that these ancient civilizations did exist back then and did meddle with our genetic material. And I think that's fair to cover and very important. So I want to thank you guys for all the support. I want to ask you to please like, comment, subscribe, share if you can. It really helps the channel keep growing. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.